12 years after a 7-year stint in the philosophy department, and I will be your moderator. And as the Greeks knew long ago, everything in moderation is best. So I'm here to moderate Laurie Fritsch, Assistant Director of Hokie Wellness. She's been working in college health at Virginia Tech for 23 years and is a multiple alumna of Virginia Tech, I believe. Yes. She is a certified health education specialist through the National Commission for Health Education Credentialing and a certified tobacco treatment specialist through the Association for the Treatment of Tobacco Use and Dependence, and I wish I knew her 15 years ago. Laurie has used the term addiction to describe some people's relationship with technology, and I hope we'll hear more about that today as she discusses digital well-being in the university environment. Professor Koeun Choi is here too. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Human Development and Family Services or Sciences. Her research focuses on cognitive development. Her research focuses on the role of technology in cognitive development during early childhood specifically. Her work includes experimental studies that investigate children's learning from interactive technologies such as touch screens, AI, voice assistants, and social robots, as well as eye tracking, survey, and observation studies that explore attentional processes and family contextual factors related to children's technology use. Today, Koeun will get us up to speed on young children's learning with AI technologies and children's relationships to digital media. And finally, Professor Jennifer Johnson, who is chair of the Department of Sociology at Virginia Tech. Her current work analyzes the relationship between pornography consumption and sexual health and sexual victimization among early adolescents. Hello. Additionally, she is currently working with the team on NSF Advance IT, is that right? Grant, aimed at using social network analysis to explore how intersectional women function within STEM academic departments as compared to non-STEM units. From Professor Johnson, we will learn today about adolescent sexual well-being and development as a public health concern, particularly in relation to online pornography. Now, we drew lots backstage before the show, and Chance has chosen Laurie to go first, and then followed by Koeun, and taking the anchor leg will be Jennifer. So take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Laurie Fritsch. I use she, her pronouns, and I am actually now in my 25th year here at Virginia Tech. I really consider myself an applied public health practitioner, and for the first 23 years of my career, my work focused on educating and training both peer mentors and college students in the areas of sexual health, sleep, nutrition, eating disorder prevention, mental health, and doing tobacco treatment. But it was around 2016 when I began to develop and think about how our device use was impacting our university students. Just as someone who was going into the classroom spaces, watching students seem to be very off topic in lectures, and then in that small group setting when I was working with students who, as a team, who seemed to want to escape into their devices and were really missing out on those connections. And it was at that time that I began to search for any kind of research, longitudinal research, or evidence-based programming to support what at the time felt like a soul-based observation. I kind of was just like, I think this is impacting our students, but I can't seem to find any research connected to it. And so I would do these really basic searches of phone use and its impact on sleep, phone use and its impact on socialization, etc. And we just started to try building little by little into the pre-existing programs that we were teaching. And so we were looking at sexual health and the use of hookup apps and how that was increasing, contributing to higher risk behaviors. We started to look at sleep and how the delay of melatonin release and active brains at nighttime were impacting quality and quantity of sleep, et cetera. And I really wanted to find something evidence-based, couldn't find it, so I set out to build it, which has been a pretty long journey. But in May of 2023, we were announced as the first digitally well university in the world by the Digital Wellness Institute, who we had been working very closely with developing a tool to assess our students' digital flourishing. So hopefully in the next 11 minutes, we'll talk about the impacts of device use on college students, we'll talk about digital flourishing, and then I'll get to share some of the successful approaches that we have been implementing in our campus, academic, residential, and common spaces. So ultimately, when I first started this work, we were approaching it from a digital addiction lens, which felt pretty shameful to our students based on some focus groups and assessments that we were doing. And it just did not feel like a very friendly approach. And I was really excited when we landed on finding digital flourishing, because it really lends itself to the rest of the health behaviors that we are looking to change and help our college students land with, in the sense that it's a spectrum. So we probably are not going to have many folks who land in the digital detox end of things, especially at an institution, an academic institution. You know, we can see it play out as symptomatically and behaviorally what looks like an addiction. While it's not a diagnosable in the DSM-5 as a mental health diagnosis, we do see those symptoms play out. And really, when you look at it, about 6 to 16% of the population has what looks like a digital addiction or nomophobia, fear of being without the phone, with about 16% landing in that 30 and under age group. Ultimately, we want our students to land in digital flourishing, which is a place where our students are using, or really everyone, we can have this conversation with teenagers, with college students, with our peers, anyone who's using a device. We want to land with, how are we using our devices in a way that helps us, where it's a very instrumental tool to guiding us to our goal achievement, and recognizing where it's distracting us and minimizing or taking us away from the things that we want out of life. So the Digital Flourishing Survey is the instrument that we used to assess our students' behaviors, and we're looking at these 8 different categories of productivity, environment, communication, relationships, mental health, physical health, quantified self, and digital citizenship. And I like the tool because it does provide about 5 different questions per category. It is a validated survey that help a student see that we're not here to shame behaviors, and to recognize that there is a really healthy way that you can have a relationship and how it can really help us succeed. So when I'm teaching students, when we have conversations in small, large groups, focus groups, we always start with the question of, what do you like about your device use? What do you not like? And it's way more powerful for me to open up with likes and have them see, oh, she's not here to tell us to stop using our devices. It opens up that conversation really nicely. And this is a tool that I directly pulled from my work as a tobacco treatment specialist. So a lot of the frameworks that I'm using come from tobacco treatment, also come from cognitive dissonance, which is something that we use a lot in the evidence-based program, The Body Project, which is a eating disorder prevention program, and the stages of change model, as well as the socio-ecological model. So these are all really great frameworks for which I use to build what we hope to be a future evidence-based program. So the interesting thing is, when you look at our students' likes, every session that I teach, this is to hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of students, the likes play out exactly the same in every single session. So things that you would imagine, I'll read them out loud. I'm not sure maybe why this has gone blank. Is everyone still there? Okay, there we are. So the socialization, communication, homework, the escapism. So sometimes you're going to see likes that are also dislikes, or we can definitely observe how this is a double-edged sword. The information availability, efficiency, pictures, memories, new skills, convenience, and some other really great pieces here. And then when we go to dislike, yes, oh my gosh, you too. And it's great because I don't have to tell them why they should dislike their devices. They see, number one, attention addiction, echo chambers, how it impacts their sleep, the doom scrolling, procrastination, how they always have to feel constantly connected. And it's interesting because when we interview faculty for this same thing, the faculty also feel that strain. So there is some disconnect between the fact that students and faculty are feeling that constant strain of connection on both sides. So just helping everyone see and create a conversation about what are the policies that we can start to develop in and outside of the classroom that would enable a healthier boundary. Perpetuates stereotypes, takes away from quality time, et cetera, et cetera. So I then really talk about how most of the time we dislike our devices because they do have a research-backed negative impact. And all of the programming that we have created is supported by research. And again, because I'm an applied public health person, I'm not a researcher, not a very good one, I try, but my ability to lift from the research and do something with it is really where I focus my work. So we talk about and do things to help with focus, to help students increase their productivity with lowering multitasking. We talk about how off-topic device use in a classroom negatively impacts academic performance, the sleep impact, how it is impacting our students' mental health and perpetuating disordered eating, social comparison, the social isolation. We are now, as announced by the Surgeon General, in a loneliness epidemic, and that inability to tolerate boredom. So these are the key pieces that we are looking at. In the spring of 2022, I conducted an assessment where I asked our students, how can Virginia Tech foster a more mindful digital environment? So this had hundreds of students answering this question after I talked after I conducted an hour lecture on digital well-being in their classroom. And the themes broke down into educate us on the benefits of being more mindful, creating best practices for professors' pedagogical design and tips, establishing boundaries in technology policies, and campus interventions. I've done this many times since then, and they are still playing out in these 4 categories. So here's how it played out this was one of our peer educators who taught other students about digital well-being.
But just providing that information of like, how can we make it better? You know, taking breaks from screens or using like focus modes if you're on an iPhone to like reduce distractions, like turning off notifications from like non-human like apps and stuff like that. I think that just like providing more information, because I'm not sure that everybody knows how to be digitally well, and I don't think that it's right of us to just expect like, oh, you're on your phone too much, like stop. That's just not a realistic expectation. We need to provide like actionable steps, and that was what really helped me going forward, is like actually being like, this is something I can do, and making sure that they're realistic and like small steps that will lead to a bigger goal.
So with all of this knowledge about what our students are saying and wanting and the gaps, we created several digital well-being practices. We have created a series of plug-and-play slides and videos that professors can have to use at whatever point feels correct for them in their academic spaces. In the spring of 2023, I was invited to keynote the Summer Institute for instructors who work with first-year experienced students, where we discussed technology, policies, and boundaries on syllabi, as well as discussing tools that we can provide for them. One of those being me going in to lecture about digital well-being in their academic spaces. I do about 50 of those a year for both students and faculty staff. We have a banners and phone box with conversation cards installations that we do in high-profile places on campus, such as West End Market, Break Zone in Squires, our student center. We do this in the library and hope to expand that. We have now digital well-being weekly challenges that derived from a more formalized 4-week challenge. Focus groups, outreach tabling, and one-on-one health behavior change coaching. So here's an example of one of the slides a professor can use. We try to use very positive language like celebrate focus, which came from professor interviews of professors that are really doing a great job with this already. So it provides an evidence-based tip or a piece of education along with some ways that a student can celebrate focus in their classroom. Here's a fun one, 2-factor and put your phone away. As soon as the student comes into class and has to 2-factor, their phone is out for the rest of the class. Here's the install of banners that are placed with the phone boxes in those community spaces. So you can see the phone box in front of me, and also in the corner here, they contain conversation cards. I'll keep describing it as we get that reconnected. But we also assess students on how did they feel about the phone boxes, because we really just piloted them, and students had a pretty great appreciation for them. They felt like the phone box was a cool idea to better the intentionality between people at the table. It helps people talk more and be on their phones less. It's a fun way to get to know people better. I actually don't think that students are, we're missing a cord. I don't think that students are necessarily putting their phones inside the box, but I do think that the box, because it says for better focus, place phones inside, and for great conversations, place phone inside, that they are an environmental prompt to enable students to pause before they're at their, before they keep their phone at the table setting, which is pretty normal. And then we have a series of cards that rotate out, and those are in collaboration with other campus initiatives, with the counseling center, with strengths, other initiatives that really connect itself to digital well-being. In the fall of 2023, I conducted an IRB study with Galapatia's community, which is the engineering living learning community, in which I went in and taught every single class of that first year experience for a week, all day, every day. And the students, we had 618 participants who went through a 4-week challenge. What we're typically looking for is intent for behavior change through the stages of change lens. And so if you can see at the top, the red is student, the red and blue are students who are either pre-contemplation or they're considering making a change, or but they're not really doing anything about it. And then the green and yellow are I'm thinking about it, or I'm getting ready to do it. So you can see a shift from top to bottom there. Ultimately, we had 2 weeks post-intervention. 56% of students made a change, and 61% reported a 4 or 5 in likelihood of continuation. We also measured productivity. Again, this is through a digital flourishing tool that we created and extended from what was developed by the Digital Wellness Institute. We measured distraction, procrastination, single tasking, and ability to focus, and all of those numbers significantly changed in positive directions for that particular assessment point. When we created the 4-week challenge, it was really intended for specific communities such as Galapatia, who were already meeting with a class, but I wanted to extend the reach, so much so that it looked like tobacco-free zones, non-smoking signs. We really needed to approach our work from more of an environmental lens so that we had greater reach with our community. When you're thinking about digital well-being, we need to shift this culture together, and everyone has to play. So that little illustration on the right with the happy faces and the weird faces, thinking back to time when we did not have as much technology use. We just had to go out and endure uncomfortable chit chat so that we could get to the deeper conversation. But now, even if Phil is going to be like the awkward person who decides to engage in a conversation without his phone, but he enters a group where everyone else is using their phone, everyone still loses because Phil's going to be disconnected because he was rejected, and we're going to be disconnected because we're still on our devices. And that's where we're really trying to create this shift for everyone. So these signs are hung in every single residence hall on campus. They're on digital screens throughout high traffic areas, and they're sent out to all FYE professors to post weekly in their classes. So as you can see, there is this phrase, hang up and hang out. And this was created by my student who worked closely with digital well-being on my team last year. This is what she says, and it can be used in any context. You could say, let's hang up and hang out with your friends, hang up and hang out with your books, hang up and hang out with your student organization. And we want it to feel really approachable and, again, not shaming. This is something that has been widely accepted by our students. And each week, a new challenge is presented. And if students answer a reflection, which is only 4 weeks, they get one of these shirts that says hang up and hang out. Again, just increasing the visibility of the movement. If they go to the website, they get online support with really great resources. There's a downloadable digital lock screen, which again just serves as an additional friction point and reminder for them each time they pick up their phone to engage with the challenge. Here is our website, which will be shared out later. And finally, I founded and launched the Coalition for Collegiate Digital Wellbeing, which has over 50 schools across the nation currently involved. And it is a space for professionals who are doing this applied work to come together and figure out effective ways to continue cultivating a digitally well environment in universities. Thank you all so much. I went way over. Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely.
Hello, everyone. Can I go ahead and start?
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. I also learned a lot, and I want to implement some of them for my courses as well. And yeah, I think I really love the idea about digital flourishing, like really the importance of balance between the two. It's a great tool for us to develop our potential, but sometimes when it's not used properly, it could also present some risks. So I approach the children and technology from the same angle. Like, it's a great tool for even young children and families to learn and engage, and then also build relationships. But when those are not used properly, they could also hamper positive interactions and opportunity to learn and grow. So today I will present some of the recent work that I do incorporating AI, but I will also talk about my research in general, that I study children in the context of digital media. So. So I direct CODES Lab, stands for Cognitive Developmental Science Lab. So we use scientific methods to understand cognitive development, and sometimes we do coding, like programming, to create some digital platforms for young children to understand and also support their learning. So in our CODES Lab, we do a lot of different things, but mainly, broadly, we are interested in how children learn and understand the world, and we are looking at how children grow in a cognitive manner by focusing on their attention, memory, and learning. So I'm also interested in how they changes over time, and my expertise particularly very early in life, 0 to 6, but sometimes I study older children, elementary, and also parents as well. I'm particularly interested in their cognitive development in the context of digital media technology. So I study a lot of things, television, touch screens, but a lot of emerging technology that allow interaction between children and technology, or technology that facilitates social interaction between children and parent and children. So I look at touch screen, video chat, like AI voice assistants or social robots to look at the impact of such interaction. Yeah, so when we talk about the impact of digital media on young children, what we know, actually decades of research suggests that it's not just technology good or bad. And then we also talked about that from the idea of digital flourishing, like it's really how we use it, to whom, and then with whom and for whom. Like, so it's very intricate questions that we need to actually look at rather than just looking at the screen time. So, and what we actually learned from this research with young children, there are multiple factors that really explain the impact of media rather than screen time in general. So 3 aspects that are very important when we understand the impact of digital media is child, content, and context. So it really depends on the child, the age of the children, or their social, cognitive, or emotional characteristics. The impact really varies depending on the individual, and also content. Whether it's educational media, then intentionally developed to support children, versus purely entertainment or violent and sexual media, have a drastic different outcomes. And it's also important to look at the context, how children use it. Do they use alone or use with parents, with others? Those are very important factors that we need to take into account when we try to examine the digital media impact. Yeah, so some of my work look at the impact of content, and that's very important aspect. So there are a lot of medias that are well designed and backed up by research that shown long-lasting positive impact on children. So Sesame Street, for example, more than 50 years of research support the positive benefit of media on young children, but that has to be intentionally designed and age-appropriate, cover age-appropriate content. So yeah, so that again emphasize the importance of contents. So building up on this idea, I'm interested in what is the role of emerging technology on children? Does that extend the benefits, like well-designed educational media provided to children? Or it may create some confusions, or is children too early to be adapted? Use this technology. Yeah, so some of the reason earlier work that I did with the AI is developing an AI tool that read a storybook to children. So one of the important aspects of learning is storybook reading, but children, pre-literate children, always need the support from the adults. So there are some technological tools like audiobook that try to play their role, but now that the emerging AI can go one step further. So not only reading the book, it can provide a feedback to children. It can be contingent, right, rather than great job for all the time. So there's some emerging line of work suggesting those type of interaction with AI is helpful for children rather than just listening to the audiobook, just watching TV without such interaction. So we wanted to see whether those potential benefit could be extended to children's real world learning, like mathematical language that require multiple repeated exposure to content, because they don't learn certain concept after one reading. They require real repeated exposure to gain understanding of the concept. So I'm not sure this will play the video, but let's see. Oh no, it went back. Yeah, there you go.
I love picnics and books too,
said Benjamin.
but I love peanuts the most of all.
Benjamin took all the peanuts. Who has fewer peanuts than Benjamin?
Lucy.
That's right. Lucy has fewer peanuts than Benjamin. Who else has fewer peanuts than Benjamin?
Bear. Bear.
That is right. Lucy and Bear have fewer peanuts than Benjamin.
Yeah, so this is the system that we developed And I'm sorry, I keep forgetting which button is the next page. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we built the system, but it's not a generative AI. So actually before that, so it's more script-based. So we design all the interaction, and then we classify what we're gonna say. So it's a little more controlled. And there's actually a challenge with generative AI. It's a relatively new tool, but also we are pretty cautious about this because we cannot really like manage what the system gonna say. So actually a lot of the systematic work using AI with children's education tend to rely on this script-based or more rule-based because there's sort of really unexplored territory of what AI gonna talk to the children. And so, yeah, so this one is more sort of script-based. So we think about children's potential like answers, and we categorize them, and then we came up with the specific feedback, whether they get it right or wrong. So it was more researcher sort of moderated interactions. And then we assign some of the children to just listen to the story without interaction, and the other children get a chance to answer questions and get contingent feedback from the device. And then we read a book 3 times and with different questions, and then do the first visit and 5th visit to see pre-post difference in their the math language. That was the sort of targeted outcome. And interestingly, what we found was that AI was not generally helpful for all children. It really depends on children's initial sort of numeracy skills. The children who had a high numeracy skills, they actually listening to like audio was more beneficial than interacting, whereas children who had a low numeracy tend to benefit from those interactions. So one thought is maybe because we predetermine all the interaction, that could be a little too easy for children who had high numeracy to begin with. So whereas children who need a lot of supports, maybe our interaction targeted those children very well. So that was sort of what we found with the initial study. But this basically really illustrate like importance of children. It's not good for all the children. It really depends on specific children with their characteristics. So it's important to understand child characteristic when we are looking at the impact of media. Yeah, so we are doing some other follow-up research to integrate voice-based interaction because AI speaker is difficult for young children because everything is verbal, so they have to talk. So we are thinking whether integrating AI with the touch-based interface so that children can interact with the media both verbally and physically. So they have some relevant physical interaction like tapping cookies to count. For the test, they learn how to count. And then whether having some relevant verbal interaction with this physical interaction would help the children or not. And this study we conducted with 2 and 4-year-olds. And interestingly, actually, AI was helpful, but when some of the interaction were automatized. So when they listened to and then the AI voice, and when we asked them to tap all the cookies, maybe there was too much for them. So having too much interaction again was not that beneficial for their children's learning. So again, all of these studies sort of illustrate the intricacies when we understand the impact of media, and it really depends on the design, age of the children, and characteristic of children, like their prior knowledge. And the last aspect about the context, one thing that we really try to do is not integrating this AI to replace a human partner, maybe find a way to creatively integrate it to facilitate interactions. So one of the projects that we are doing right now is we create this platform called Tailmate. So it's a sort of storybook reading platform, but rather than AI reading all the stories, it has a function that parents can choose particular character that they want to act out, and then the rest of them, they assign different AIs. So they can also assign certain character to their children, though it's more like theatric or dramatic storybook reading, rather than giving all the reading tests to parents to go through everything, because sometimes that's a lot to impersonate the characters. So we try to find a way that some of the benefit of AI can be integrated without necessarily removing the opportunity for parents to engage in. So we completed some user study and then started to do some experiment. And then, yeah, my other project, I also think about how technology can really integrate it to facilitate opportunity to develop children's potential and also learn and play creatively. So we also have a series of projects involving social robots, and then children and social robots, they create a theater together, and then they act different roles. So those are some of the attempts that we try to do, really how to help children and families to flourish in a digital environment rather than diminishing or presenting risks. Yeah, so we have a couple of the ongoing projects that we're looking for children to participate. So we have studies for 2 and 6-year-olds. So some of them are in the lab and children's child care center or preschool. So any of the parents who are interested in, we would love to have them come over. And then we have doing a lot of other projects. Again, the AI piece is one of the region projects that we are doing, but we also conducted the project focusing on like techno-appearance, like how the presence of technology hamper parent-child interactions and lower the sensitivity. So we do a lot of different type of technology and then explore their role in children and parent-child interaction. Yeah, so that's all. And I listed my lab website and then email and my X account. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions or want to collaborate. Thank you.
I think you're going to have to give me screen share capabilities. I don't think I have the power.
It's not an option? Okay, thanks. Sorry, it's not coming up as a, I thought I was co-host, but
Right, it's not giving me.
Whose Zoom is it?
It's not giving me the, it's giving me the power to share, but.
okay, you're the co-host now, Jennifer.
All right, let's see if that'll do it. Saying something with my Zoom settings is a problem. I think I put the PowerPoint in my submission. Do you all happen to have a copy of it, or I can send a?
If you want to send it to me,
Sure.
PROLSON@vt.edu.
All right, hold on. I can put it in the chat. Would that help instead of emailing it?
No.
Okay. Say then you're going to have to say your email one more time.
PROLSON.
PR.
P.
Oh, I got it. I've never had that problem where I can't share. It says I don't have permission. It gives me the share option.
Okay, I've requested access to it.
Okay. So sorry about this.
Phil, you're doing great.
The irony of having a a conference on technology with
Yes.
all of us having our devices sitting in front of us.
Okay, just tell me when to advance the slides.
Okay, I will not be able to see. I'll just go on my slides, and I'm looking at the three of you all sitting at the table right now.
So I guess, okay,
Yeah.
so Phil has to share.
should see it in the Zoom meeting.
There you go.
Okay. There we go. Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Jennifer Johnson, and I'm here to kind of actually dovetail a little bit about what the two presenters just talked about, which is public health, digital media, and children, actually, adolescents, really. I've been doing work in the area of pornography, digital media, and pornography for about 15, 16 years. And I started out by thinking about it in, as the kind of typical questions that, and you can advance the slide at this point in time. When I started out, we were really asking questions about pornography in terms of questions of sexual empowerment and representation, or freedom of speech. And these are the kind of two classic arguments in which we think of to discuss pornography. Morality questions, speech questions, but these were questions really grounded in old school pornography that was more video-based, magazine-based. And the digital landscape has really changed the way in which we need to think about pornography. And that's part of my work, is to change the narrative. So we stop thinking about it as a legal argument regarding free speech or government policy, or a moral argument about the rightness or wrongness of different types of sex, or kind of questions of sexual empowerment of women or men. Because what we see is that I say the toothpaste is out of the tube in terms of our ability to think about controlling or managing content. That it's estimated that about 20% of digital content is pornography. Pornography is kind of omnipresent in the lives of children and adults. And I'm not making a moral argument about sexuality, sexual behavior, or individual choices. This really isn't about sex. It's more about health, right? Asking questions about the role of pornography in the sexual development and sexual health of adolescents who grow up to become students, partners, and parents. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And so I'm using a public health lens because I want us to begin talking about digital pornography very similar to the way in which we talk about McDonald's or Walmart or any other corporate entity that sells commercial products that has an impact on our health. So when we think about McDonald's, when we think about Walmart, we think about it as a corporation that has a corporate sensibility that is motivated by profit, but that it sells us a product that has an impact on our wallets, on our labor, on our bodies, on our health. Well, the pornography industry is really the same. It is an industry. It is not simply a form of media that randomly appears out there on the internet. It is produced and distributed by an industry that is governed by profit. It's one of the most profitable, even today, even still with free pornography. And it is not governed by the idea that it wants to promote healthy or inclusive sexual exploration. Right? That the digital pornography industry is grounded in algorithms and bots that use spam and push marketing to distribute content, right, that is most profitable. And that content can include, as has been demonstrated before Congress, as has pornography industries admitted, that it includes unverified sources of illegal or exploitive material, including child pornography. And that the industry uses technology, including AI, to circumvent human considerations. So they use bots and technology to get around any type of ways in which we may think of as mechanisms to manage or adjudicate healthy sexual exploration, whether it is issues of consent, issues of age verification, or even labor practices. And so you can go to the next slide. My goal is for us to begin to think about pornography a little bit differently. We know that pornography is now the dominant form of sex ed for our children. Average age of first exposure of pornography is age 11, which is about 5 to 6 years before average age of sexual debut. Sexual debut has not changed really in the past 20 or 30 years. Boys, the average age of sexual debut for boys is 16. For girls, it is 17. Which means that boys, particularly boys, because contrary to kind of popular sensibilities, pornography is still an overwhelming habit of boys, can spend 5 to 6 years consuming pornography before they even have their first sexual encounter. And so pornography is the starting gate for the life course of sexual growth and development. And we know very little about what it means to have an 11-year-old begin sexual development with overwhelmingly advanced sexual behavior. And adolescents report that pornography is basically everywhere and almost impossible to avoid. And pornography comes to them unbidden. A majority of first exposures around the age of 11 are unwanted exposures. Those are exposures that come to them through their video games, come to them through their DMs. It doesn't come to them through searches as much as it comes to them through these kind of unbidden hidden ports of communication in video games, in social media, in their well, I guess that counts for most. I was trying to think of a third option in terms of video games or social media. So the idea that somehow we go to Google and they find it through a website is not the dominant form anymore. And that is because of the way in which pornography industry uses bots and algorithms to disperse its pornography out through these means. And the one thing we need to understand, and you can go to the next page, is that the content of pornography, research shows very clearly that the content of pornography has significant levels of violence and aggression. Recent content analysis showed that 89 to 90% of all of the most popular pornography consumed has acts of violence or aggression. Almost all of it is exclusively directed towards girls. High-risk sexual behaviors are very common, with very infrequent use of condoms, if at all. For example, strangulation is a new form of sexual behavior depicted in pornography, and research is showing, and even anecdotal reports are showing, even at Virginia Tech, that reports of strangulation are increasingly being reported in at the Women's Center, at the Health Center, and that is a direct response to what high-risk sexual behaviors are being shown in pornography. And a fetishization of youth and childlike imagery is common. So if a child is starting at age 11, right, with pornography, these are the most common types of pornography they will see. You can move forward. And it is common when I talk to people that people think about pornography more along the lines of kind of DIY pornography that maybe people are putting out of themselves. They oftentimes think about the pornography on the web as a kind of chaotic system where you can find anything that you want, and that it is kind of a freewheeling area, freewheeling form of media. But in fact, that is not true, that pornography is really controlled and organized almost exclusively by one company that was known as MindGeek. It's now known as ALO. This will be its fourth iteration of its name as it tries to outrun regulators. It changed from MindGeek to ALO after MindGeek had to testify in front of Canadian government about the presence of child pornography on its websites. So it rebranded itself into ALO. But really, if you look at MindGeek, MindGeek is a technology industry. It bills itself as a technology company. So while we think about pornography as sex, it's really not sex. It is technology and commerce. It's not about sex ed, it's not about health, but it does in fact operate as sex ed and health. And so our curious adolescents, around the average age of 11 or 12, experiences with pornography are curated largely by a technology company that specializes in algorithms and bots that aggregate content across the internet and curate it such that the content that is most profitable, that is the most triggering, is that which is easily found first. And its content curation is driven by corporate logic, not innate sexual interest. So the idea that pornography represents innate sexual interest, right, and that what we find on the internet with pornography, I'm talking to a black screen, is more about what corporations, what MindGeek wants us to find, rather than what we are innately interested in. And for an 11 or 12-year-old, that is something that is not well understood. Can anybody see the screen? And I'll remember what the one was. So if you remember back when the screen was there, that you will see that the men on the side, those pictures that I had, are the three men that really dominate and control MindGeek. So MindGeek is, or ALO, is literally run and managed by three guys. Hello, Janaya.
Yeah.
You can pull the other one out. I don't think it's going to do anything.
All right.
Seems apparently in there.
Try the other one.
Let's try that port.
I'll try something else here.
I can keep talking a little bit, but the next screen is really important. Is that it? Okay, yay. So again, when we think about pornography, MindGeek owns all of this, right? So all of these, whether it's Pornhub, RedTube, YouPorn, GayTube, Pete Perez, all of these are owned and managed by a single company, right? And what they do is they coordinate across these sites to figure out which content makes the most money and how to make that content most visible. And what they find very clearly is that the most aggressive, the most violent, and I don't mean most violent like as in, moving into illegal things, but certainly aggressive content, right? Most extreme content is that which makes the most money, garners the most clicks. And that's the content that is most easily accessible. And that's the content that the 11-year-old is most likely to stumble upon. Right? And so part of my work now is to try to begin to articulate out how this political economy of the digital pornography industry puts children at risk. So if you go to the next slide. And as I've said here several times, that when the average age of first exposure is age 11, but the average age of sexual debut is not 16 or 17, that means that digital pornography is the primary, if not sole, source of education for our adolescents for 5 to 6 years, right? And we're seeing that this is having an impact on their sexual experiences. There's increasing reports of strangulation and aggressive sexual behaviors in teenage sex. Oftentimes, unwanted by the females, right? And unknowingly aggressive and violating consent by the males. Could probably do these without it. The second way in which pornography puts adolescent sexual health at risk, right, is that the bots and algorithms, the political economy of the pornography industry, accelerates the life course of sexual discovery for adolescents because it ensures that the content with which they find most easy is that which is preferred by the most advanced users, which are adult users. And this puts adolescents at greater risk for the negative health, emotional, interpersonal, and health outcomes associated with high rates of pornography use. We know that advanced users are more likely to be high risk individuals, to show certain personality traits in terms of their mental health. And that is the material that our adolescents are most likely to find most easy. Okay? The third way in which the digital pornography puts our children at risk is through just simply legal safety, right? Is that the MindGeek has admitted that child pornography is found throughout its sites, and that child pornography is often intentionally disguised on large bot aggregators like Pornhub. And so it is very easy to come across child pornography. Even in my research, I have come across child pornography and had to have a conversation with the FBI that this was for a case we were working on with the government to deal with age verification. And we came across child pornography. It is not uncommon for kids to come across
I'm
child.
not on the screen. They can't see you.
I'm trying to go without the screen.
Okay.
You want me to keep going?
Just come all the way up. Why are they making you sad? Okay, come sit down.
I think you can mute. Yeah, there she goes. Should I keep going? Okay. The last way in which digital pornography puts children at risk is personal privacy. Is that the digital pornography industry is one of the largest collectors of metadata on the web. So they begin collecting data on children as soon as children encounter their websites. And the digital pornography industry is one of the most sophisticated data collection trackers. It is because it is fundamentally a technology company that it has been developing tracking technology across different websites even before Amazon. And so they're very good at it. They're very good at tracking customers. They're very good at curating content in order to target consumers. And so what this means is that they'll begin collecting data on our children very early on and are able to kind of curate and cultivate their sexual discovery, their pathway on sexual discovery. And this is only going to grow more problematic with AI, that because again, pornography, the digital pornography industry is at its core a technology industry. It's really at the forefront of developing new points of access to consumers, including virtual reality, machine learning, facial recognition, artificial intelligence, and what's called social media platforming, to be able to move across different social media platforms. This I have experienced pornography through a virtual reality glasses. It is very triggering to be in that particular space. We're now seeing AI being used to generate pornography with women who, unbeknownst to them, taking their images and turning them into non-consensual pornography. We also know that part of the problem is that rules governing artificial intelligence and pornography are very unclear. It is not necessarily illegal to do that or to even depict child pornography that is not involving an actual child. So we have some, sorry, I have workers out there. We have ways to go in terms of thinking about the legality of pornography catching up to the realities of pornography, and our children are at the forefront of this. And finally, since we're still on a black screen, you can't see what I'm talking about, but finally, what we're seeing is some of my new research is looking at the ways in which, you can see this. I was only looking at one at Cora Olson, that we are starting to see that this is a public health concern, particularly among adolescents, that some of my new research is interviewing child advocates who are working with children who have either perpetrated or have been victims of sexual assault. And we're seeing that pornography is playing a significant role in their victimization and in the mechanisms of assault. So one of the fastest growing groups of types of assault is child-on-child sexual assault. And it is not uncommon for them to report that they were doing what they saw in pornography. And so it is for all these reasons that I am arguing that we need to begin to think about pornography as a public health concern, not a concern about morality or speech or empowerment, and that we approach it like we approach all public health issues, circling back to the first presentation, which is to begin to increase awareness of the way in which pornography plays out in sexual health and development, to begin by creating pornography inclusive sex ed in schools, to one, increase the effectiveness of sex ed in schools, but to also increase the attention we give to pornography. Students are seeing it. It's a reality of our students, and they want to talk about it. Even when I give this presentation to college students, I have lines of students who want to talk about the role of pornography in their life. They know something is wrong, but they don't have any language or framework with which to be able to think critically about this. And that's a public health question that we can answer, right? The old ways of understanding pornography as I said, morality, empowerment, or speech are no longer sufficient to help students think critically about pornography in their lives. And that's why I would argue that public health is the best way to do that. Thank you all, and sorry for the technical glitches. And I just did that. That's my, this is a model we have built to look at the way in which pornography plays a role out in the cycle of child sexual abuse. And that's it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Phil.
That was fantastic. I mean, all right, I have a lot of questions. I'm just going to ask one, and you have the ill fortune of having a philosopher as your moderator, so I apologize in advance, but I really am curious about this. So all of you have talked about flourishing, well-being, happiness, right? And these concepts have been like a central topic of philosophical anthropology for millennia, right? So what is, say, digital flourishing or well-being? How is this theorized, right, by people studying human development? How do you understand the relationship between, say, flourishing and health? I kind of want to push on Jennifer a little bit to explain why you want to separate public health and morality, like why you see those as like needing to make a hard distinction between them. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, is there an implicit conception of human nature, right, that informs your understanding of flourishing, health, and well-being? Like when you're talking about human development, right? I mean, is there some kind of like underlying implicit conception of human nature? Like, are you learning about human nature when you're studying these things? And what are you learning about it?
I guess I can go first since you called me out by name on that, right? So I'm not a philosopher, right? So I don't know if I'm going to dig as deep as you're looking to dig on that. For me, the separation of morality and public health is probably not as deep as what you're thinking of it, right? So I think that when pornography is discussed publicly, right, in public spaces and academic spaces, it is oftentimes comes to a screeching halt in terms of discussion, because it's oftentimes thought of in terms of sexual liberation or in terms of religious prescriptions, right, or religious limitations for sexual behaviors. And I think that that type of dyadic conversation does not get us where we want to go here at this point. That when we end up at that space, always, right, which is what type of sex is good, what type of sex is bad, and who's benefiting from that. And I don't think that that's the type of discussion that we need to have at this point in time in order to really confront the realities that we're dealing with the impact of pornography on sexual behavior. And I'm not sure I'm concerned about flourishing or happiness. I'm way more concerned with security, safety, sexual autonomy, consent. That those to me are the fundamental principles that are underlying my concerns about the impact of pornography on the sexual development of adolescents.
In reply, just quickly would be that, I guess, like suggesting that, well, I guess that the way, like the reason for shifting focus over to health seems to imply a pretty impoverished conception of ethics or morality. And that it might be much richer and much broader, right? So one thing to do might be to explain like the role of things like health in, the living of a good life, right? And what these kinds of, the implications of pornography, like what they have for sexual development is an important part of like living a good or flourishing life as a human being, right? So, I mean, I guess if some things are healthy and some things are not, does that have something to do with like who we are?
As human beings?
Yeah, exactly.
I prefer to be healthy. I prefer my child to be healthy.
But we don't always choose in terms of health, right?
I'm sorry, say again?
We don't always choose in terms of health.
No.
Right.
I think that's the whole argument I'm making, is that is an argument, I think, that is relevant to thinking about pornography, right? And it has not been an argument that has been used historically to think about pornography. That pornography has been locked, I think, as a discussion for many years in these kind of dyadic choices that circulate around good and bad, right and wrong. And it has gotten us very little in terms of being able to think critically beyond false dichotomies. And I think the value of health as a discussion, right, is that it can be applied universally, right? In the sense that, to me, working to ensure health for all people is a universal value that I think we can all agree on. That there's not one mechanism or one prescription for health. So it allows some variation and allows some ways in which we could think critically about this. That to think about public health is to also think about that we all have a collective interest in this, right? That this isn't just me making decisions on whether to eat red meat or not, although that too has collective decisions, right, in terms of cost and things like that. But that it really, there's two of me on screen now, that it really does, I think, create a different conversation.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. What I'm trying to explain, I think, is that there's room for you in the world of ethics, and you are welcome. Right? And
that might be too deep for me.
We ethicists are not so dyadic in our thinking.
I'd love to.
Turn over.
Yeah. The way that I approach digital flourishing and digital well-being, I don't think it necessarily has to be about chasing happiness, but I think that fundamentally it is about chasing dopamine. And so dopamine is our brain's reward chemical, and it is triggered and released when we watch porn, when we have sex, when we are addicted to gaming, when we smoke, when we do drugs, when we eat, so when we online shop. So our brain always wants the easiest thing. And when we get a like from or a text message coming in from someone, the variability, the randomness of it is what keeps us coming back for more. It's the hook model. And so that is fundamentally what everyone is seeking, just dopamine chasing all of the time when they fall into these positions of porn addiction. So the porn industry is certainly profiting off of human nature. So that's one thing. I think dopamine chasing, we see that all the time with our college students and really with everyone. So when I approach digital flourishing, I'm really thinking about how do we get people to engage with behaviors that are not just going to release dopamine and then they're going to want more, but what are the things that are of value to them? And asking our students to think critically about what are my top 3 college goals and what specifically are activities that are going to help me achieve those goals. And then I have them do sort of an alignment of look at your device use, look at how you're using it, what are your top 5 most used apps, and doing an alignment cross-check of does the use of each one of your apps support any one of those 3 goals? And that is a huge aha moment for our students. And one of their goals may not be happiness. It could be I want to have it's usually I want to have close friends, I want to do well academically, and I want to have great experiences. I keep it specific to the college experience. And I could say consistently those look pretty similar across all students. It may not specifically be happiness. But I will say that fundamentally, when you're thinking about the loneliness epidemic, what is outlined in the advisory put out by the Surgeon General, they discuss the longitudinal studies of how poor social relationships have associated outcomes of 29% increase in the risk of heart disease and 32% increase in the risk of stroke, and lacking just one close social connection, or lacking social connection, they defined it as having one close social connection decreased that risk. But it was the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so when you're looking at device use and how it takes away from our connections, our authentic, true connections, which we need in-person connection, it is a public health problem. And our device use can be great to keep us connected, but it can't be a replacement or displacement of all in-person connection. I don't know if I answered your question at all.
No, it sounds like maybe you're saying that the devices sort of appeal to a certain part of us that we need to learn how to kind of like get some perspective on and regulate, right?
Yes.
So like when I you know, because I teach a book on digital technologies called Stand Out of Our Light by a philosopher named James Williams.
Okay.
I've been teaching it for years, and the students, when they hear it, it's like, you know, like, yes, I know that, I see that. Yes, this is giving words to the experiences I've been having. And one thing he talks about is like a difference between, he calls it a higher self and a lower self, right? Where it's kind of like, when I was smoking cigarettes 15 years ago before I knew you, and like, you know, I wanted the cigarette, right? I wanted it. Yeah. And I would smoke it, but I didn't want it. I wanted to not want it, which was it's a second order desire, right? And he's sort of saying that what we need to do is really kind of like appeal to that part of ourselves. Like that we have this, like you're saying, this dopamine kind of like lizard brain self, right?
Absolutely.
But then there's a kind of more sort of deliberate self or rational self or whatever you want to call it, right? That can kind of get some perspective and get some leverage on that to achieve goals that we are setting for ourselves rather than, you know, what the cigarette manufacturer is setting for me.
And with behavior, exactly. Thank you for bringing it back to nicotine addiction. I think one of the hardest things about digital addiction is a doctor would never say, oh, Phil, you should smoke, it's really healthy for you. Like some good things are gonna come from that, you know? And absolutely, like nicotine addiction is a true addiction. I don't want anyone to feel shame if they do have one. But no one's gonna say there's good health outcomes from nicotine addiction. Whereas someone could say, everyone's gonna say there are positive things from digital use and there are negative things. And so we're not going to be untethered from this device. They are not going anywhere. And so every time we pick up our phone, which is all of the time, everyone look at your pickups, you have to have this like internal struggle dialogue to say, okay, now I have to intentionally put it down, even though I have this thing that could suck me in. And that is a really hard decision, like that puts us into decision fatigue all of the time, to have to say, I have to put it down now because I have to do something effortful that's going to come with larger rewards in the long term.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think about the nature, I think is also important. Like we study technology, but ultimately we want to understand children, like how they learn about the world. And sometimes what we think is the best, like or more efficient way of think about that is maybe not very child-centered way, but there could be some values that maybe that's not that efficient, but they may explore and like learn new things. So there's I think important aspect about, and also I'm very interested in a more child-centered approach, really understand how developmentally sort of they develop and then situate the technology within it. So so I think, for example, ChatGPT, like if some of the tasks that the way that children typically answer does not match the algorithm. So maybe a lot of the algorithm are coming from adult-based database, and then maybe there's a way to quickly, you know, push them up to the level that we wanted or what we typically thought, but we don't really know much of the value that children's own thought, their thought processes. So putting everything that are generated from the adult database and shoving them into children may not always be beneficial long run. So there's also the the child pornography, right? Like it could be the way that adults consume may not be developmentally appropriate for children, and also very young children. So I think understand the nature or like how they develop in general, I think very critical to really ask these questions. And so I think because technology are designed by human and also oftentimes adults, so we rarely involve children and try to understand how they think of it, how they understand, or why they think it that way. But I think there's very critical aspects that we need to pay attention to make it really relevant and beneficial for them. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. We have questions from Zoom.
Yes.
The world of Zoom.
We have a question from that's in the chat from one of our graduate students, and it's specifically for Laurie. Did you see any significant change in TikTok use since Virginia Tech banned its use on EduRoam?
Oh, no, I have not specifically looked at TikTok use, although anecdotally I hear about my students using it all of the time still. So I'm not sure. I wish I have not measured that. When we ask people, when we do the digital alignment tool in classes, they still report TikTok it's right up there. Very entertaining.
Hi, I have a question that's sort of pulling together some of this. So I really like Jennifer's approach of thinking about addiction and pornography through a political economy lens. And I wanted to kind of put that to the two of you in the room to just sort of ask what a political economy kind of approach to the work that you're doing might do for what you're doing and how you think about your own work. So in Laurie's case, a lot of your work is very focused on kind of behavioral modification. Right, and in some ways we see, as with Jennifer, what we're fighting as individuals against corporate systems, right, that are really targeting, called the lizard brain, or the dopamine hit, right? So we as individuals are challenged to kind of steel ourselves against something that's enormous, right? So what is a public health approach from a political economy perspective rather than an individual kind of psychology or community-based kind of response look like? And then Koeun, likewise, I think your work is fascinating, and I also worry that what we're studying is how to better introduce technology into children's lives earlier. By understanding how technology can be used, right, in good ways to further education at an earlier stage, to better engage, right? But what we're also doing is we're training children to be comfortable and familiar with technology at an earlier and earlier stage, and to sort of create a sense of independence with technology, right, rather than sort of community-based relationships with technology, and the ways that your research can potentially feed into, let's call it, the corporate machine of addiction. And so I just wanted to sort of see, and I don't know if Jennifer, you have, I didn't kind of frame this as a question for going back to Jennifer, but I was really wondering what that kind of framework does to your way of thinking about what you do.
Do you want to go?
Yeah. So I do want to mention, I study attention, and then we, in the field of like attention literature, we talk about like bottom of attention and top down attention. Sometimes we choose to pay attention because we are interested, we want to learn more, versus like our attention is driven by external sources. And also like very young children, they watch TV even though they don't comprehend a whole lot, because their attention system is more driven by bottom-up systems. But as their children get older, like around 3 and up, they tend to ignore things if that doesn't make sense in a controlled experimental setting. So for example, like Sesame Street, if you show that, because it's intended to to help young children learn, so children they choose to pay more attention to the Sesame Street versus randomly edited the video, so because they don't make sense. So that has an indication that they can strategically choose what to pay attention in a short, brief experimental setting. But we don't know in the like a YouTube setting, there's a way shorter video, even the educational content are chopped up, and there are a lot of other distractors around them. And if there are a lot of the distractors are feeding them, like long term, like whether they can truly control, right, their content top-down way is questionable, because even adults, that's a hard thing. So I think, I haven't mentioned a lot about them, but also that when we study attention, we study sustained attention. Like you may look at something, but you may not deeply process, and doesn't really relate to recall or learning. So sometimes we think about this depth of processing, and then these are indicated by their heart rate going down, and then they have a better recognition of those items and better recall. So I don't want to necessarily equate everything, because they may take a look at the online platforms or the videos a lot, but they may not get a lot of things out of it or processing in very critical, deep manner, because those medias are not consumed or designed in a manner. So I think that's also the important distinction that we need to make. Like in some of the aspects that we learn from like TV literature, and then with I think AI and others, we also like cognitive researchers also express a lot of concerns, because where do all the algorithm and data are coming from, and are they really age appropriate? But I do understand that some of the like the evidence or research can be like cherry picked and then can be used to really advocate the benefits of new shiny fancy technology, but actually going like deep into the literature and then like really critically analyzing, like that's more complicated. We need a very sophisticated approach. And also the one aspect of restriction, like full restriction is also a concern, because people study like parent mediation, like media like strategies, like how they introduce media to children. And there's like sort of three big strategies. One is just rule-based, no media like restriction. The other one is co-viewing, but not really talk about it or actively discuss. And the third one is active mediation. And this line of work has studied more with like sexual content and other violent content, but restriction doesn't really turned out to be the best strategy, because they somehow get into them through friends or other, but they just don't know how to handle. So it's parents like consuming together could sometimes be helpful, but if they don't say anything, that may be perceived as they think it's okay or proof. So it's also important for them to, I'm not necessarily advocating like they need to start early, but because those are permeating to children's life very early in life, we also need to find a way to support parents, how to talk about this, control this, whether there are any like rules and regulation or tools that they can use. So there's more societal concerns that we make media more child-based, not like profit-based, or technology,
Yeah, so I stay within the university wheelhouse with digital well-being, because I really think that policy is the way to go with anyone under the age of 18, really under the age of 25 if your brain's not fully developed. But you know, in the university setting, students have the capacity to, of course, make their own decisions. And I think that we focus so much on it, I'm the only person doing this here. We as in I. Here I am, the department. I focus on behavior change because digital well-being is so nuanced. I mean, you don't actually know from the digital flourishing standpoint. There are just in that eight categories, and within each of those categories, 5 subcategories. So a person could be flourishing in 5 categories and then need some help in 3 others. But if they don't care about improving those, then there's no way they're going to make a behavior change. So it really is about just keep offering different pieces of education and different challenges for students to try that feel like they have, that enable agency and enable self-efficacy, so that a student sees it and they say, oh, like I could use my phone as a photo album instead of just scrolling all of the time. I could focus on those pictures to result in like a more positive mental state if that's what a student's really struggling with. I frame it sometimes as big tech versus Virginia Tech and how we're going to win this. And so when students are presented with that, they're like, yeah, big tech is trying to steal my attention economy. You're right. And so really framing it from a place of students, this is not your fault that you can't pay attention in class, that your relationships are being sabotaged, that you're sitting in your room scrolling instead of experiencing all that college has to offer. It's actually big tech's fault. So when you come at it from that, really I've found that students do get excited about trying something different. So it sort of is this get everyone on board, but I have to get in front of lots of students to do that. I feel like I'm campaigning all of the time, and that I am selling public health from the digital well-being perspective. It is a product. You're absolutely right, Jennifer. So the 4 big umbrellas that all of our challenges focus on are focus, relationships, experiences, and brain breaks, which is really all about embracing boredom. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but that's where I'm going.
Can I add one more piece to this, though, in terms of, because I definitely agree with the idea of policy approaches, and even in the realm of pornography, policy plays a role in terms of age verification, in terms of holding credit card companies accountable for accepting payments on pornography websites that include child pornography or material that lacks consent or is AI generated, to even opting in instead of having to opt out. So there's policies out there that homes can that pornography will automatically be blocked to homes at the provider source unless the home opts in. Right now, pornography automatically comes and you have to opt out. So there are policy strategies that do play a role. But I'd also like to kind of add that as a part of education narratives, right, as a part of a kind of public health notion, is that the reason why I like the political economy and public health narrative is that it's a narrative that is that the students that resonates with students, that isn't shame-based, right? That is proactive-based, that allows them a sense of agency to manage and take care of their own health. But that I think as a part of a public health response, these counter narratives out there, right? Smoking, for example, we knew it was dangerous, but it wasn't until we had public health discussions and educational campaigns that really turned the corner on smoking. And I think the digital flourishing, the kind of ways in which we're thinking critically about the phone, and the type of content in which students are looking at are really important for us to have open discussions, to give them the tools, the theory, the perspectives, the kind of language to be critically reflective of their own digital consumption. And that should include pornography, since it's a huge part of what they are consuming when they pick up that phone in classes, at stop signs, all over the place. So if you think your students aren't watching porn when they're in class, you're wrong. So it's just this idea of being able to have a counter narrative that is easily accessible to students, easily accessible to adolescents, that they can think critically on their own about what's going on and make healthy choices as they face big tech, which is, can't ask them to face that alone.
We're out of time. We're a little bit over time, but there is just one last comment in the chat from one of our faculty members directed to you, Laurie, just to, I think, to follow up on your big tech versus Virginia Tech, which is that, and yet most students seem to want to work for big tech. How do we engage with that problem?
Yeah. How do we engage with that problem? So someone want to throw more employees my way.
Well, let's thank our speakers for coming. Great talks. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, Phil, way to roll with those punches.